All right, guys, welcome back to Middle American Outdoors Fireside Chats. This is week number 12, and we've got the whole crew on tonight, thankfully. All right, guys, welcome back to Middle American Outdoors. I think I do that every time. And so, anyway, as you can see, I've got the lives up behind me. If you guys are logging in, either on the Facebook community chat page or on the YouTube page, just leave comments, questions, chime in, help us learn on this topic. And also let us know if there's any technical difficulties. That way we don't botch this too badly. So that being said, let me bring in Ben and Jake. How's it going, guys?
It's going, buddy.
Oh, good.
Good. I think this is the first time we've all been on in quite a while.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy sample-wise for everybody, I'm sure.
I think it's probably even before Rut that we were all on last.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, Ben, what have you been up to recently?
Oh, just a little bit of hunting for myself, not a whole lot. Our shotgun season started this weekend, and we invited Donald back down with his son. And Saturday night they had some mechanical difficulties with the firearm, and they had 3 misfires. And but we got that remedied. Come back up Sunday night, and he was able to take a real nice doe. It was a great hunt. Had a good time.
What were they using for firearm?
It was a 350 Legend and an AR platform. And I think what happened is when they slid the bolt forward, wasn't fully engaged, and they're trying to be quiet, so they just let it slam forward, and so the firing pin didn't hit the round because it wasn't seated all the way. But we got that taken care of, and he did the deed Sunday night. So. It was a lot of fun. His boy was just amazing. He was super grateful, and it was really nice to see the respect he had for the animal, and he's super proud of it. And he was just all in on the whole experience. It was really neat to see. Donald's doing it right. He's got that boy raised up to really respect the animal, and just a great hunt.
That's awesome. So for those of us that are not Iowa, what is some of the regulations on a shotgun season there for anybody that might be thinking about it?
Well, for the shotgun season, the first season is only 4 days long. You got Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and they've opened it up where you can use a straight old rifle cartridge. Which some of that's kind of under fire right now. The way I understand it, they're wanting to. I guess there's some talk about taking some of the rounds off the list that you can use. I haven't had a chance to really dig too much into it, but what I really like about it is it afforded this young man an opportunity to hunt. He's pretty small stature. He's not big enough to draw a bow yet. With crossbows during archery season in Iowa. And then for him to go shoot a slug out of a shotgun, puts a pretty good wallop on a kid. So he's able to use a 350 Legend, which is based on a 223 caliber, and so super low recoil, but a highly effective round. And he shot her probably right around 80 yards, I'm guessing. Just made a super clean, ethical kill on her. I think she maybe ran 20, 30 yards at that. She would stand on one side of a cedar tree line and made it just to the other side before she fell. So,
yeah,
I really like the fact that they opened that up to them types of cartridges and helps get the youth out there. And it's a round that's not just going to beat them up and scare them. And so really enjoyed that. Other than that, it's real similar to your other states for your rifle season. You got to wear your orange and all that. Just the biggest thing is the straight walled rifle cartridges.
Yeah, I would think, like, especially novice gun guy like me, when I hear shotgun, I obviously just think of like a 12 gauge with splatter pellets, but I didn't think anything like a 350 Legend or anything like that. So people know that they, you can use something similar.
Right. I grew up in Nebraska and predominantly hunted with a rifle. So when I first moved to Iowa, it just didn't make sense to me to go out and hunt these things with a shotgun. And so that's when I got into archery. Plus, it extended my season dramatically. When I started opening it just kind of got me interested again. Our second season opens back up there at downtime between first and second season. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there's no seasons open. Kind of gives the deer a break. Is kind of the Iowa tradition of hunting is a lot of deer drives, which I think is a big reason they use the shotguns. But that's just not really my style. I really like to be out there on my own, kind of that archery style hunting. Get up close and personal with them, and so, like I said, this really opens up the door for a lot of different hunters and get more people out there.
Yeah, very cool. What have you been up to, Jake?
Oh, not a whole lot of working really. I usually take this rifle season off for the fact of the amount of hunters that are in. This area is highly sought after. I don't know. There's a lot of people that come out here, so I tend to stay inside and kind of use the time to think about what I want to do at the end of December or how I'm going to approach that or whatever. Like season getting towards the end of the season for me, so. Yeah, just pretty much been hanging out at home. Haven't been able on it. So.
Very good.
Like I said, I do plan on going out there and grabbing those cameras just to make sure none of the rifle hunters have taken those. It's happened in the past during the season. Not saying it's rifle hunters or anything, those guys, but it just seems to happen during this season. But he's traveling through the woods, hopefully get a picture of that deer. that for you guys at least. He's been pretty elusive on my camera. I haven't had him, so hopefully I can get a camera picture of him. So.
Yeah, Jake's talking about the big atypical buck that he shot beginning of November and got eyes on him last weekend or 2 weekends ago.
2 weekends, November 29th.
Yeah, a week and a half ago or so. So
yeah,
starting to work on those videos. You guys will start to see that content that we've been talking about for a while now. As for me, you've seen that I mean, we're still just working on catching up from rut videos, really, and getting out content from all three of us, as well as our weekly DIY or gear reviews or cooking or whatever else we have to complement the hunting videos. And yeah, it's just a really chaotic time of the year, but it's leading into a muzzleloader hunt that we've had coming up here, and is going to be the topic of discussion for tonight. And as everybody else I'm sure has experienced, stuff comes up, work and family stuff and whatever else, and just because you have a planned destination hunt doesn't mean it takes priority, obviously. And stuff comes up, and unfortunately it sounds like for the crew, we're not for certain yet, but it sounds like maybe Jake and Ben are out for the muley hunt out west, at least for the entire trip. We'll see. I'm still planning to go ahead with it, and tonight we are planning on discussing kind of how to prepare for a trip like that for anybody that's thinking about it, and to talk through it and get advice from anybody that's online and taking part in the live, because honestly I don't think any of us have that much experience with destination hunts. Ben's been on a few different style. Jake hasn't really been on any. I haven't really been on any outside of, we did this muley trip 2 years ago, the same trip, a little bit differently. But we thought we'd talk about what we were doing in the months leading up to preparing for this, and how we would be packing and preparing for a 4 or 5 day camping trip to go muley hunting in the winter. Yeah, so I guess we'll start with you, Ben. What's your experience with Western style, or not Western style in particular, but with destination hunting?
Make a list and check it as often as possible. Reach out to people in the area that you're going to be hunting. Say, like we went to that bear hunt here a few weeks ago, took the bears out there. Something I've never done. The guys that I went with had never done a hunt like that. So we reached out to, outfitters in the area, see what they suggest on bringing as far as gear. Make sure your meals are planned. One thing that often gets overlooked is your vehicle and transporting your game home, your aftercare. There's two ways of looking at that. One is not really take anything, save space. And then if you do get something, find a local store or have one found where you can go buy a cooler or something like that. What we did was we took a trailer that we had 3 guys, all of our gear, traveling a long distance. We didn't really want to leave stuff sitting in the bed of the truck. So one of the guys had purchased a small stock trailer, and we actually took a freezer with a generator, or a couple of freezers actually, and helps it all through. So to get a bear, was going to need a lot of space, for the meat and the hide and all that. So unfortunately, we didn't get to put them to use, but if we were successful, we had a plan of action to take care of that. I don't think you can over-prepare. The nice thing about going on a hunt like that is you have your vehicle to use, so the more gear you can take and be prepared, the better off you're going to be. And not necessarily for your personal use, but also, if you have tire, vehicle trouble, if you blow a tire, having patch kits, a chainsaw is something that's often overlooked, especially if you're going to be out off the beaten path. And with us going out there in the wintertime, tire chains aren't a bad thing to have, tow straps, stuff that you can use to get yourself out, because you're going to be out there away from civilization for the most part, and it might be hours or the next day before somebody can get to you. So,
Yeah. Let's see. And Jake, I was right. You haven't been on any big destination hunts of any sort.
No, not like that. Not where I would have to pack for multiple days.
Yeah.
Still kind of new to all that kind of stuff. Eventually later on here in life, coming up, hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll be doing a lot more of that. I've been planned. Of course, plans change with work and family, but yeah, definitely pretty new to that. So I pay attention to what everybody else says and kind of just learn from there, I guess.
Yeah. And then same with me. I said 2 years ago we did this similar muley hunt. Stayed at stepdad's house down in Kansas, across the border. And so there wasn't a ton of camping prep, because I knew where the lodging was, and we just basically took out from there every morning and back for the afternoon and back out in the evening. A few days we kind of stayed out all day. We just popped around and put a lot of miles on the Chevy. And it was tough on the stuff hunting, obviously, going in there blindly, just trying to read public maps. And some of the stuff we're going to break down more specifically over the next 30 to 45 minutes. And for those guys that are on live or that are joining in, if you have any questions that you think about for a deer camp style like this, or you're planning on doing something and you got questions, or you're really experienced in it and you want to raise points to us that maybe we're not thinking about, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm sure you all have learned over the time that I am a way over preparer, like Matthew and I were talking about last week. I mean, I take a 50-pound pack into a tree stand for 2 hour sit or whatever, and I'm just notorious for overpacking. So I'm sure for this trip, I was just gonna take crates and crates of like basically everything that I own, just in case. You never know, but I need to, realize we're not going to the end of the earth or anything. We're going to southwestern Nebraska. There's still a town every 10 or 15 miles. But we'll go into some more specific preparation topics that we could think of. I guess the first thing that I had written down on my list was obviously identifying where you want to go. And as far as like if you guys were trying to pick an out-of-state hunt, and then to piggyback off of that, if you were trying to decide what to do and where to go, what to pursue in that state, how would you go about it? Anybody?
That's a tough one, man. I mean, it's you can almost just throw a dart, throw a dart. Social media is a great tool to use just to kind of get a feel for what's around. Here in Iowa, if you're going to go, I don't think you can look at is how many permits were sold for that particular area. So like in my county, our deer numbers are way down for Iowa standards. They only sold 200 doe tags this year. So, if you're going to travel to hunt, this might not be the county that you want to focus your attention on, just simply because our numbers are so low. That's one avenue.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it, guys. Can you hear me, Matt?
Yeah.
All right. I feel like we get a lot of attention out this way just for the fact that if you look in like everybody's after the big trophies or whatever, but if you look in like records or Boone and Crockett's or whatever, they have some of that posted here in Kansas where you can see all these different good-sized deer, what county they were harvested in. And I feel like Rollins County is one of the top ones out here, so I feel like people find that online and then come here hunting, I should say, just because of the big deer numbers. But as far as trying to find access and figure out what you need to do, luckily when you come out this way, we sort of kind of know landowners and stuff like that. Trying to be more on top of it than hear from it. Trying to get permission up across the state line. A lot of local farmers here also on the ground there. So that's where we have a little bit of advantage on our side. I'll be making phone calls this whole week, and hopefully we get some more access than we have had in the past for them, and hopefully turn out something decent. But
yeah, that played a big role. So the mule deer pursuit in the Frenchman unit wasn't just like a total stab in the dark. I think, a couple years ago, the decision was made to try that because Jake and our stepdad Terry live right across the border into Kansas, 7 to 10 miles across the border at that time. And so, yeah, it was, they knew people around the area. They knew people that owned ground across the border. So we had much more potential opportunity there. Plus, there's a lot of good public land in that area of Nebraska. If you look at the atlas, a lot of it doesn't contain muleys is the problem, and it's a whole different story. It's really hard to understand why it's a mule deer conservation area. When we were in there a few years ago, deer are just too smart, right? I think it was 3, 4, 5 years ago, I had a muzzleloader tag, right? And I think Terry and I tried to go out down there for whitetail because I didn't have the mule deer conservation tag. We tried to go out for whitetail, and we were just seeing gigantic mule deer everywhere we went. Every oil field we pulled into and every creek bed we looked in, there was just a monster muley. And then so a year or two later, I finally drew the mule deer conservation tag, and we went out there, and I think the biggest deer we saw in the 4 or 5 weekends was a giant whitetail. on some CRP over top of a doe and didn't care anything about me standing there. Just how it works, right? 2 years ago, we did start to get onto some mule deer during muzzleloader. I think, we saw some right away in rifle, and as much as, like, I wish I would have had the camera stuff with me at that time, but at the very beginning of rifle season that morning, there was just a gigantic mule deer walk right by the truck in like 10-15 minutes before legal on opening morning of rifle. It just stood broadside right by the passenger door. Then he ended up getting killed, I think, the next day or later that day even. But then we didn't really see too much more during rifle, at least not opportunity-wise. Some of it was on ground that we had permission to hunt during muzzleloader, but not during rifle, which is understandable because families get out there during rifle more. And then when we got back in muzzleloader, those deer weren't on the same ground, and I did find deer. We were finding deer, which I think is a win in that situation, and hopefully pays off now 2 years later, trying to do the same thing with a little bit more knowledge. But definitely the more access you have, the better. The more private the access, the better. Obviously, control that pressure element a little bit more. And let's see, and getting as much information as you can from people in that area. Like, we hunt a lot. We hunt all whitetail over here. It's a whole different ball game than going out there and trying to chase a mule deer. I'm not gonna rack my antlers and grunt and bring him to me, kind of thing.
I think an important thing to remember in those instances is, use your Onyx or your Hunt Stand or whatever your app is that you prefer, and look at the private landowners around the areas you're going to be hunting, and try to find out where they live and knock on their doors. You'd be surprised at what a simple knock on the door and a question will get from you. You call them from your house 2 weeks prior, you're probably not going to get a positive response from them. But you show up and knock on the door, be presentable. The type of people out in the rural areas are pretty generous. So that's always a good thing to keep in the back of your mind.
And part of selecting when to go is knowing too, know that here in Nebraska, rifle hunting is prime, and not, in my opinion, not a lot of people muzzleload, especially if the weather starts getting rough. And it definitely, comparatively, there's not nearly as many as during rifle. So you're going knocking door to door during that 9-day rifle season, probably going to not turn up too good of results. But middle of December, when their family's been out there and hunted already, and they don't have family coming in to hunt and this, that, and the other, and probably a lot better opportunity. They're not having somebody knock on their door every day, kind of thing.
And a big trick that I found that works real well is you can get out there the day before, stop in a local coffee shop and offer to buy some. Coffee or breakfast for the guys. Nothing else you get good.
Yeah. He's cutting out a little bit, but I think you guys got the gist of that he's I don't know why you're cutting out so a little bit, Ben, but he was just saying get there a day early and get up to the coffee shop and buy a round of coffee, or get in. If you guys live in a small town, or if you're in small town Nebraska, you'll see that. Go to the dinner on the coffee shop, go to McDonald's. Here in my home, in the town that I live in, they actually have shifts of coffee drinking at McDonald's, and I've talked to some of the guys that go to those, and they have at the 9 o'clock they talk about weather more, and at the 1 o'clock in the afternoon those guys like to talk politics. And that's just small town Midwest for sure. And I could see it being beneficial. Let's see, then more topic specific. The next thing I would look at is knowing your permits and your regs, which, let's see. Ben, you used to live in Nebraska, and so did you, Jake. So actually, you could say the same. But where would you guys start as far as looking at permits and regs? I'm gonna go find my permit real quick.
Yeah. As far as me being the younger generation, I choose to use the internet more than anything. Or the local game wardens, of course. You definitely are very useful. I stay in touch with the wardens quite often, but as far as going to Nebraska, I've been researching just for my own hunt and stuff like that to get up there and help Matt. But online for me tells you any question you want, you can basically find out. Everybody, that's not always true what you see on the internet. But the Nebraska Wildlife and Parks, whatever you guys' website is there, it's a good tool. Of course, those cases, but definitely you can always call the game warden. Like I said, they are very helpful usually. So, I would.
Yeah, I'd advise talking to the local warden, especially anything you have a question about. You don't quite understand it. Call the local warden where you're going to be going, because if you have an interaction with him, that's who you're going to be dealing with. So,
Yeah.
definitely good to at least know him, have his phone number handy. You just never know who you're going to be. So.
Yeah, and I think, you can usually go to Walmart or something and buy tags when you get to a state. My caution there is usually they don't come with as much information. Like, I buy mine online, and I'll show you, like, here is my Frenchman tag. And it will have much more detailed information. Like, it tells me the season dates and the legal weapons to use. So, for instance, I cannot use a bow to fill this tag. Even though it's a more primitive weapon, it's not listed as a legal weapon on this permit. I can either be firearm during rifle season or muzzleloader. But cannot use a bow to fill a tag like this. And that was one question I asked my game warden friend here, just in case, because I'm kind of shaky confidence with that muzzleloader, and I'm much more confident with the bow, but can't use it. Let's see, and then it tells you the more stuff. Like this is, for instance, a one deer of either sex. So I could with one deer of either sex. The fact that it says deer, I could actually fill a whitetail tag with this time around, or a mule deer. And then it could be a buck or a doe, obviously. And then plus one antlerless whitetail. So I can take a bonus antlerless whitetail. I can't take two muley does, but I can take one muley doe and one whitetail doe, or two whitetail does, if that makes sense to anybody. And then you can also, when you print permits in Nebraska, it'll always have a map of the unit as well as an attachment with that tag when you buy them online. That's another perk. I didn't print the map because I know the Frenchman unit now pretty well. But you can print it. You can also print out, finer regulations when you buy your tag. Like this is the refuge and public land restrictions for statewide permits. Which was more related to my whitetail buck permit, but it would tell you that like the Frenchman unit is a mule deer conservation area, and what that all entails. And then otherwise, some other, I'm going to speak specifically on Nebraska because we're talking about this mule deer hunt. Some other stuff to get in your hands. So in Nebraska, you can go to Nebraska Game and Parks and you can ask for their brochures every year, and it's free. They just mail it straight to you. It's free. And whenever people from out of state ask me at Middle American Outdoors about information about Nebraska, I always send them that link so that they can just request these permits and have them in hand. And so like you have your big game guide for 2020, small game and waterfowl just in case we were get out and pheasant hunt or whatever, and turkey guide as well. And then the all-important public access atlas. So we've talked before, I do use Onyx, and I love Onyx, but Onyx isn't going to stand up in the court of law with the game warden if it's not accurate, versus I can hand them this and say, hey, it said here that this is public, and if this isn't accurate, then there's a problem. This should be accurate until 2021. And then it might change based on if people take their CRP off or whatever. But you can go through here and you can find, let's see, let me find a unit that we're actually in. Head into, but usually, you know, we'll go through Onyx maps mostly, but I'll turn to this. Like, this is part of the Frenchman unit we're heading to. And I'll just verify that the ones that I've marked on my Onyx maps are active on this public access atlas, and then we can refer back to it, so it's easier to follow on the GPS of where we are in relation. But you know, Onyx, sometimes it's hard to read road numbers, and this is much easier to see your road numbers and your accessible roads, etc. And it's color coded a lot more clearly. You know, Onyx maps just shows you like government access ground, doesn't necessarily label it. And we've talked before that in Nebraska, can be very confusing on what's what. For instance, you have open fields and water CRP, open fields and water open to fishing only, open to hunting and trapping, small grain stubble management, wildlife management areas, and they all have different, semi-different rules. So just, yeah, being able to see the color coded here and get your rules based off of that. It doesn't necessarily have the rules listed right there, but then you would go to your game guides and figure that stuff out. Or in the back, usually there's a code. But that's easy. There's no reason not to have those when you can request them online in Nebraska, and they'll send them to you for free. I get them every year at the beginning of the year as soon as they're available. And some other regs that I looked into for these guys, if they were going to be there, was one of them that's kind of different maybe for Nebraska is even though they're not hunting, they needed to have a hunting permit to be doing anything associated with hunting, be that scouting with me or filming or just being there together. They would have had to have had a hunting permit. So then we were also looking at like what other kind of stuff could we do in that area as far as like pheasant hunting and coyotes and anything else to make that permit worth getting for a 3 or 4 day period. And the last one that's popping in my head is blaze. I had to double check on the rules for blaze. And in Nebraska, you do have to have the same amount of square inches of blaze on your front and back and head as rifle, just like rifle season. But it only applies to the hunter. So technically, these guys would not have had to wear blaze to be filming and tagging along. Obviously, I'd recommend it. I mean, it's not like we're going to be hiding if I'm wearing it, so they might as well be wearing it too and being safe. But those are the kind of things you just need to be thinking about ahead of time. You'd hate to show up there and learn that you have to wear blaze in Nebraska when you don't have to wear it in whatever other state you're in, you know. And that's one that I had to double check on because I wasn't real clear on the rules, and I had to ask the local game warden his opinion on it. And let's see, any other quirky regs that you guys can think of, either from Nebraska or something that you should be looking into?
No, I think the biggest one is just like you said. You know, if we're tagging along, that we have to have unlicensed. Same thing applies in Iowa. I think Kansas as well.
Yep. Yeah, it's the same way, except the only form of shed you don't have to have a hunting license for is shed hunting, because it's more of a family event now. I guess it seems like everybody does it, which is kind of different. It's kind of weird, you know. Even if somebody's tagging along to check a trail camera or to help you move a stand or even filming, like you were saying, you had to have a hunting license. Which I've had to talk with the game warden about that before. Those are the same rules here in Kansas, so that's definitely interesting for, you know, something that needs to check up on when they go to whatever state you're going to.
Yeah. And the next one we kind of started to cover there, or I guess we covered. The next topic I had was access. So understanding your access. We've covered that. Basically, I just covered how to understand your public access, whether it's through Jake likes Hunt Stand. Isn't that what it's called, Hunt Stand?
Yeah.
I know Ben and I use Onyx. I think Jake uses it as well, but primarily Hunt Stand for him. That's one option. You know, you can get your state membership and get the landowner information on either one of those apps. And your public access atlas isn't going to give you landowner information, but it's going to give you, something that's going to stand up in court as far as if this is public or not. Familiarizing yourself with the tags for that, the markings for that state. You guys saw one of Jake's preseason videos where he discussed the walk-in hunting signs in Iowa and Kansas, in the differences in those signs and how they indicate what's legal. In Nebraska, there's typically a designated parking area, especially on like those public pieces that are kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I think they're supposed to basically be fenced in. They're supposed to have boundary markings, and they're supposed to have like a primary entrance that has the information. One big thing to recognize, like in Nebraska, is almost all the public land doesn't allow for target shooting. So don't go in there thinking that you're going to camp. There is public land, especially in western Nebraska, where you can actually go and backcountry camp in there. But you can't sight in your rifle and target shoot in there. Just how it is. They don't allow target shooting. But Nebraska does have a website where you can go find accessible rifle ranges across the state for sighting in a rifle after travel or anything like that. Let's see. You guys have any topics that are jumping off your minds?
Not really.
The next topic I had, I guess I'm probably going to lead most of this because I was the one getting ready to go hunting, and am still going to go hunting. Just made it look a little different. The next topic I had was preparation. So there was a lot of preparation that went into this for me, and that's mostly because you guys have learned I don't shoot rifles that much. So I've been out quite a bit shooting the muzzleloader and trying to learn and having the ups and downs. And there's also the element of physical fitness, because it is more of a Western style hunt. It's not a walk 300 yards and sit in a tree for 8 hours and just try to outpatient the deer. I know that I'm actively going to have to put in some miles. That's how I got on deer 2 years ago out there. We did do a lot of scouting from the road of the small pieces, but a lot of those pieces you can't see down into the draws from the road, and I did have to put in a lot of boots on the ground to get back in there. And I think I need to do a lot more of that this time around to have a chance. So the physical preparation, exercise, cardio, strengthening, all that stuff plays a role. So when you're looking at those destinations of where you're going, that would play a role in it. Are you going to altitude? You need to be able to handle hiking more and all these different aspects. You can't just decide to go do an over-the-counter elk tag in Colorado and, drive there from Louisiana and go for it. It's going to be a rock your world. Even eastern Nebraska, it's not like eastern Nebraska is only like 1,500 feet elevation. So we're not anywhere near, talking about going 10,000 feet up to try to chase an elk out of nowhere. It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough even if you are trying to train and prepare for it, but that's an aspect to look into. If you're a more cold weather person and you're having to go, you want to go chase a turkey in Florida, you need to be able to deal with nasty humidity and stuff like that. Let's see. I guess the big one, I'll get you guys in then. What is some gear stuff, Ben, that you think of? Let's just go with start with just the straight hunting gear.
Well, you're definitely going to want good boots, especially on a hunt like this. You're not going to want to go, not going to be wearing your rubber boots that you wear to tree stands out here. And you definitely want to be broken in. You don't want to go stop at Cabela's on your way out and pick up a new pair of boots to say you're going to go hunt with them the next day. You're going to regret that. Having gear or clothing that's water repellent. the early mornings, especially this time of year, you got a lot of frost on the ground. As that sun comes up and starts melting that off, you're going to get wet, and it's going to be cold. So if you're wet and cold, you're going to be miserable. So having an outer layer that's going to stay dry is a huge thing, and definitely your layers. You're not going to want to go out in the same stuff you're going to be sitting in a tree stand with, because you're going to be mobile. So you want your lighter layers and stuff that you can peel off as you start warming up, because there'll be times where you might get back in there and you've got to sit for an extended amount of time on an animal, waiting on it to get in position or whatever the case may be. So you want to have enough to stay warm if you do have to be sedentary, but you also want to be able to strip stuff off if you're going to be mobile. And a good backpack is a huge tool to have, and be familiar with it. And as always, a first aid kit, definitely. Something that I'm very adamant about, even if I'm just hunting in my backyard here, is having something there, just your basic first aid kit.
What about you, Jake? Anything else?
really good socks.
Yeah. I would say all the same things. Sorry, I've been muted most of this time. I tried to talk. I don't realize that I'm still muted. But I would say all the same things. Ben, their boots for sure. Like I said, I haven't been on too many hunts, but I would imagine I would probably wear what I wear shed hunting and hiking. That's basically what I have for those type of hunts. As long as they're warm enough. And then as far as clothing wise, your guys' Sitka gear, that's a basic deal. That's a good thing for what you're talking about, being able to layer up, and if you're on a deer or on whatever, you be able to put another layer or take off one just as easy. I don't have all those layers yet, but Sitka does have, just wearing their pants and everything. Just kind of getting off on a tangent here, but just wearing their pants and everything like that, you can definitely tell they're made for the comfort and a hike and everything like that. You can really stretch them. It seems like on the ones that I have, definitely a lot higher quality to be able to stomp around in the pastures and stuff like that with. And as far as gear, Matt, I think you pretty well have it all covered. I know you do. I'm sure your pack is packed 50 pounds worth of flashlights and knives or whatever you're going to carry. Yeah, definitely want to have one. And like you said, Ben, first aid kit, that's something I would probably overlooked, honestly. Especially if you're going to be out.
You're too young, man.
What's that?
You're too young still.
Why is that?
Eventually, your brain's going to start shifting toward being mortal.
Oh. But, yeah, anyways.
You still got that young man's invisibility brain going on.
Yeah, I guess so, but I do have one in a bow hunter box that's still in the box, but
I have one at home.
Yeah, it's still in the bow hunter box. It came in from December last year, but
that's funny.
I planned if I ever got one, but yeah.
I don't know, Ben, if I missed it, but optics is huge on this kind of hunt.
Oh, yeah. I always overlook that.
So I'll have, for this style, in this area where I'm going, it's a lot of get up high and spot and stock. So pretty invaluable to have a good spotting scope. Just adds to the gear. I'm running through my mind, especially with self-filming. I don't know, Terry. So those that don't know, basically the plan now is I'm gonna go back like 2 years ago, and I'm gonna go stay at my stepdad's house, and over in Kansas, and then we're just gonna wing it from there and figure out what we're gonna do. There's a good chance, there's gonna be a lot of hiking in and then spot and stock, and I'm not sure how much Terry's gonna be doing, etc. But as far as the self-filming, I could potentially be carrying my pack, and I know for sure I'll have my spotting scope in there, and probably phone scope for filming. And then likely over my shoulder I'll be carrying my main camera. I want to try to take the Canon in there with me and get good footage if possible. I did a practice run that way last night going after a doe, but just to see what it was like carrying all that gear. Yeah, it's possible. With the boots, you guys will see I wear rubber boots. I wear rubber boots all the time, so it's not an abnormal thing for me. In August, Ben, when we were... No, I don't think I wore rubber boots that day, actually. I wore lace-up boots for some reason, but I usually wear rubber boots all year long. Everything I do. So I guess my feet are more used to it. I like them because then I know that I can deal with any water, you know, any marsh crossings, anything like that on the public land. I don't have to worry about. I've got 12 inches to spare, basically. And I'm just more comfortable in them. Plus, I've invested a lot of money into the rubber boots, and I don't want to invest more money into other shoes that I won't wear all that often. It'd probably be a whole different story if I lived out and that's what we did every day. But considering what we do, same with the Sitka gear like Jake was talking about. Everything that I own is elevated to, like Ben has on there. And that's all built for the whitetail tree stand guy, but I'm gonna wear it. I mean, there's still some science to it for blending in. I'm using it more as gear for warmth because I do like that you can pack layers. A good tip for packing layers that I share with people, and you'll see in my videos, is I use a Alps Outdoors compression sack, and I can put a pair of bibs in there. I can put an outer jacket over top in there. I can usually put 1 or 2 upper layers in there and then stuff it down and compress it, get it down to the size of about, you know, a volleyball, and stick it on the outside of my pack somewhere on the compression strap, and we're good to go. And I usually pack it in there the way I would take it out as I'm layering up. Same concepts apply. You know, when I lived out in western Nebraska, when we would do these style hunts, we would walk in bare minimum, borderline cold walking in just base layers or whatever bare minimum was at that point, that you could stand, and then get to whatever lookout point we were going to be in before the sun came up. And after you stop sweating, that's when you start layering up, so that you can, you know, avoid being cold as long as possible. And at that time, usually I would then I would go from minimal layers to everything on as soon as I stopped sweating, and then I would start to shed layers again, instead of like putting a layer on and waiting till I got cold and putting the next one on and getting behind the 8 ball. I tried to stay ahead of it and then shed layers as I could. But I never had gear this good either. This is a whole different world, having the Sitka layer gears. So I'll be packing a lot of that. I'll probably take my entire closet full because I can't decide what I might need in the 5-day period.
Well, you know, out there it might be 30 one day and 70 the next. You never know.
Looking at the forecast, it does not look like December, which I don't know if that's a help or a hindrance as far as the hunting's going to go. I think it's a help as a hunter, but it might be a little bit of a hindrance as far as the hunting.
Yeah.
It's looking like mid-50s every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be upper 60, well, close to upper 60s this week. And then just nuts.
Take my early season whitetail gear, man.
Yeah. I don't know, deer movement, you know, I expect it to be, since after rifle, a little bit pressured, I don't know, you know, it could be either or, but the warm temperatures I would expect towards the later hours is going to be more shots, you know.
Yeah.
Unless you do find a bed, of course, but
that's hard. That's super hard in that area by the border with all them damn sage bushes, and everything looks like a freaking mule deer.
Yeah, they're definitely in the
Yeah. I think last time I was out there too, like there was just little, like it had snowed just enough that there was like little patches of snow and dirt everywhere. Like everything was just a brown and white collage. Like if it wasn't moving, you weren't seeing it. But so that's, I guess that's the hunting gear side of it. Maybe we'll just cover one more topic. Would be like, what would you consider for like, the camp side of it? Start with you, Jake. You're like me, we would be winging it.
What's that?
I said you're like me, we would be winging it. But what would be on your mind as far as stuff that you would think you would need?
As far as not doing it before, I'll basically go off what I've seen people use. Where you're gonna, well, it depends if you have your camper or not. But if we were going out and doing what we had planned, cookware, definitely need to have, so you can boil water or whatever you need to do. But a lot of you guys use them jet boils or to be able to make them instant meals or them powdered meal. I don't know, the military meals I see a lot of people carrying. But as far as camp gear, I don't know. All that comes to mind for me is, like I was thinking today, I don't even have a portable grill type thing. Just something I need to get in the future. All I have is a big, smoker. But as far as hunting in the future and backcountry and stuff like that, I definitely need to find some sort of grill or grates or pots and pans or something like that, because I don't have any of that. But I know Matt, I know you do, and your camper and things like that. So I think everything has been covered as far as being able to cook food and handle the campsite that way, because you have quite a bit of experience at the camping side, as far as I don't. But definitely looking forward to learning down the road on that. Ben, what would you, any sort of different things that you take, or you would take?
Well, it's one of them things. It kind of depends on what you want to get out of it. If you want to have more of an adventure, get the tent, the sleeping bag, and just a grate and a pan to cook in, and you can get by. I'm getting older, and I kind of like my creature comforts. Heck, I might have a generator and a space heater and a camera. It just really depends on what you want it to be. But the thing is you want to have the bare essentials. You want to be self-sufficient, because you just don't know what's going to happen. You might get out there and have an accident, and it might be your cell phone might die. So having a battery backup is important. With the technology we have available, there's no sense in being unsafe about it. So definitely make sure you got your phone charger, keep your cell phone on you, keep it charged up. Because even though there might be a town 15 miles away, the hospital might be an hour away. Especially if you go out in northwestern Nebraska, it might be 2 or 3 hours away to the nearest hospital or doctor. So, and also have that contact information handy, have it stored in your phone, have it written down in your wallet, right on the back of your tag or whatever. Local law enforcement, game warden, have those contacts readily available. And one thing that I think is often overlooked is try to let people know where you're at and when you expect to be back. So if something does happen, they know to come looking for you. I think even I overlook that a lot personally, just because I'm not close to the house. But I still try to let somebody know which stand I'm going to be in. That's just kind of the seasoned hunter in me. It's just I've seen so many accidents happen that could have been prevented. And that goes into being prepared with your vehicle. I think is often overlooked as well. Just a simple tow strap is invaluable. You can get yourself out of a pretty tight jam with just a simple tow strap and a high lift jack. Especially when you're getting out west. I grew up in a pretty rural part of Nebraska, and it wasn't uncommon for every farmer to have a high lift jack in the back of the truck because they have so many uses. And get familiar with your gear that you're taking. You don't want to go buy all the stuff the week prior and then try to figure it out when you're in the jam. So spend some time, get familiar with it, know what it can and can't do, and definitely know what your vehicle can and can't do. I've come up on some guys that, and usually somebody from southern states that's not familiar with the snow and stuff that can come in a hurry out the way. And they, had I not come up on them, they'd have been out there all night or longer. So, be familiar with your equipment. That's pretty huge.
Yeah, we just lost Jake there. I think. Oh, there he is. Welcome back. Yeah, know your vehicle. That's one reason we don't ever take Jake's truck.
The old Nissan.
The Nissan. I mean, if we get one, I want to be able to tow it home. So.
It gets the job done.
Well,
I trust.
I guess the one thing that popped in my mind when these guys were talking that we'll close on then is, I guess my biggest advice as far as what you're going to take on is know your limits. I think, at my core, and I think Jake's the same, and I'm sure Ben's the same, he's just got a little bit of back problems and stuff right now that's limiting. But the two of Jake and I talk a lot about wanting to be able to go to Colorado and do like a backcountry elk hunt and do the base camp with the spike camps. And, I watch a lot of Elk Shape and watch Dan on Elk Shape. And to be able to do that, like, 7 to 10 day base camp to spike camp out in the woods, nothing else but what's in your backpack. I desire that so much, but I know that would be the dumbest thing I could do this year, right? And we're not there. We're not even close to there. So being able to understand that, like, I might be physically fit enough, but mentally and preparation-wise, no, it's just not there. And to think I could go out and buy all the gear in one swoop to get it done is insane. So instead, we're kind of taking an approach of like biting off a little bit at a time. So the plan for this trip was that I would take my 20-foot camper bunkhouse and I would tow it out there. We were going to find a city park out in southwestern Nebraska that has 24 has power year round at their city park, and we were going to park there and we we're going to have power to the camper, and then we were going to have our base camp there basically, and we we're going to come back. We were going to have power. We could charge things. We we're going to have propane heat for sleeping. We're going to have indoor sleeping, and obviously all kinds of room for bringing gear. Our camper is fully loaded with anything you could need for camping, so I knew that we'd be able to eat and drink and make merry and live easily on that front while we're working more on learning the spot and stock style and what it takes with the gear in the field and those kind of things. I think the goal as far as a step forward this time was that hopefully we're going to bring all of the essentials that we need, and we wouldn't have to go to any stores to like buy food or water or something stupid that you should have remembered before you drove into the Rocky Mountains or whatever, And so, but we'd have that fallback that we could have, because we know that we're not at that point yet. And then the next year, maybe take the next step of, instead of taking the camper, we do it in tents or whatever. We go to Colorado and we stay at a public ground. We kind of talked about for next year, stay at a public ground with an over-the-counter tag, have base camp, and just stay at base camp every night and work your way from base camp every day. If it means you don't have the best chance at hunting, you don't, but you're not jeopardizing your health risking it. We're not ready to spike camp. So we'll try to base camp, and if we have all the essentials and we can survive base camp pretty good for a trip, maybe the next year we look at one day of spike camp and then back to base camp kind of thing. And did we take enough stuff to survive one night out in the trees before coming back to base camp? And just grow from there. Do it wisely. Don't rush into it and jeopardize your health or that of the person you're hunting with just because of greed. It's not, we draw back to experience over inches, right? It's not about that kill. It's not supposed to be about that. I'm not supposed to be going to western Nebraska just to kill a muley buck. It's supposed to be that camping and that family time and brotherhood and being out there kind of deal. If you get a buck, it's just a bonus. And so it'd be the same, don't go to the mountains and risk your own life and limb pursuing an elk just to get one, and potentially cause yourself harm. Just know your limitations and have a wise progression plan as you're learning, which I hope that we have. And hopefully we continue to pursue.
Yeah.
You guys have any closing thoughts? We're right toward the end here.
No, that's like pretty well covered it.
No, and well, unless plans change or whatever, Matt, and everything, definitely we'll be able to film and whatnot on Sunday for Matt.
Hopefully.
And if plans go, I'll make sure I'm still on speed there. As long as plans go, I'll be able to film on that Sunday if that's what we decide to do, and that'd make it a little easier on Matt. I was on silent. But yeah, he's getting tired, but as I'm sure I am too. But yeah, as far as
Jeez.
but anyways, yeah, I'm gonna quit talking so it's not as bad.
That's all good. Hi, Willow.
Yeah. Hey. Oh my.
But so the plans, watch the videos as they come out later. The plans are basically I'm heading out Friday, getting to my stepdad's place, going out probably early Saturday morning, and do a little bit, probably more or less driving around scouting for the entire day. And then if we get a chance, we get a chance, but hopefully get some intel for Sunday, and hopefully Jake's available and really go after him, and then have probably Monday morning even before driving home. I'll be doing some check-ins on our page while we're out there, so watch for that stuff. And then we'll probably do kind of a recap at some point on a fireside chat, lessons learned, etc. for that pack or that Western style pack-in hunting. But thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and we'll see you next week.